Hello and welcome back to Rule the Game. Today I'll show you how to play Heat, Pedal to the Metal, published by Days of Wonder by Asger Granerud and Daniel Skjold Pedersen, and I'm sorry for butchering your names, for 1 to 6 players, starting at age 10 and lasts for about an hour. This game also comes with extensions in it already. You can play whole tournaments, you can upgrade your cars, you can do all kinds of things in this car racing game. I will only explain the basic game so that you can start racing, and then you can read up on the advanced rule later. Heat, Pedal to the Metal is a car racing game. So it's no wonder that whoever wins the car race wins the game. For example, here for the USA track that we have, you see that you have to do 2 laps, and you see here the cars go around twice. And whoever is the first player to cross the finish line here is going to win the game. To prepare for the game, you take a racetrack and put it on the table. In this case, we took USA. That's recommended in the instructions for the first game. Put that here. You take as many cars as you have players. You put them in position 1 through 4, in this case for a 4-player game, randomly. Then each player gets a player board. I'm gonna put it here in the middle of the table because I don't have space otherwise, but technically it always goes in front of each player. You get a gear that you put in the first gear over here. Then every player, according to their color, and this is the yellow player, I get a starter deck with 12 cards, 3 of each, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But then also with a 0, a 5, and a heat card. Then in addition, you get 6 heat cards as shown here. You take those heat cards from the deck, put the 6 of them here on the heat deck, the engine deck. As it also shows you here, you get 3 stress cards. You put those on your deck that you have here. You shuffle your starter deck with the extra stress cards. You put it here. That's my draw deck. Every player then also draws 7 cards from their draw deck. You can look at them, 5, 6, 7. You can look at them, take them in your hand, and now we're ready to get started. Heat is a turn-based game. The turns always start the same. At the beginning of each turn, all players decide independently from each other if they want to increase or decrease their gear. You can go up by ±1. We start all in first gear, so you only have the option to go into second gear at this point. But let's say if I were already in second gear, I could go in first or third, or I can actually also stay where I am. Secondly, you then play as many cards from your hand as the number of your gear. So I'm in second gear. I get to play 2 cards. I take my 2 cards, put them face down in front of me, and wait until all the other players have done that too. The first 2 steps in each turn are done by everybody simultaneously. Starting on the 3rd step, which is here, now we follow the ranking in the race. The thick white line here on one side of the track, and you see it actually switches sides sometimes, shows you who is in the lead on fields where 2 cars are next to each other. So the ranking currently is yellow in front of blue, then green, and then red. Now I'm here in the lead, so I get to play my cards first. I flip them around, I get a 4. I move my car 1, 2, 3, 4. As you saw, I just switched from the left side to the right hand side because the thick white line has switched to this side. And with this, technically I could be done with my turn. And what I then do to finish my turn is I fill up my hand back up to 7 cards. I actually put these here in the trash pile, and that would have been my turn. And then the second person goes, that's the blue one, does exactly the same thing. then the green one, and then the red one. And that's the base of each turn. Now, as you notice, that sounds a little boring, because now if that were all to do, then we would all go into fourth gear and we would just play as many cards as we could. And that would drive us as fast as possible around the track and the race would be done. It's not that simple. Because as in a car race, when you get into curves, you can't be too fast in these curves. And that's what you see here. You see here the speed limit for the different curves that you go through. Now you can go a little faster in these curves than what the speed limit tells you, but you have to watch out. What happens? Let's say I'm still here and I were in third gear and I had decided now I need to play 3 cards. I'll play these 3 cards. Put them face down, everybody else does the same thing. Then I'm in lead, so I'm going to go first and I play 8. So I'm going to move 2, 4, 6, 8. Now, as you can see, my 8 is larger than the 7 here. That means my engine is not going to like that very much. It's going to overheat, and therefore we're going to place 1 heat here from the engine, that's the difference between 8 and 7, into the trash pile. Now you might say, well, what does that matter to me? As I said before, while we keep playing, more and more cards are going to end up in the trash pile, and when there's no card left in the draw pile anymore, you're going to have to shuffle these, and then these cards, the heat cards, end up in a draw pile. And now what you see here is that these cards, the heat cards, they have this trash can that is marked out, meaning you can't play that card. You can't get rid of it. So once you have a heat card in your hand, like I do here, I can't play it. It just stays here. It messes up my hand, it clutters my hand, and therefore I can't really move that quickly and that fast anymore. Nevertheless, sometimes you should go a little faster around the curve than is necessary because you want to win the game. So, a little cluttering is okay. But don't clutter too much because you only have 6 of these heat cards. And if you end up spending all those heat cards, let's say instead of the 8 that I did here, I had gone 13 for some reason. Fourth gear, and maybe had very high cards. 13, so I would have had to put 6 cards over here. Now what happens, as you can see here, this is what it's called. You spin out. You get off the track because you were that fast. And what happens then is, well, they pull you back and you can actually keep racing because it would be sad if you were just out of the game now. So they bring you back to just before the curve. That's what this symbol means. And then, if you're in third or fourth gear, like I'm here, you need to take 2 more stress cards from the deck, put them here in your trash pile. In first or second gear, you would have to just take 1, and you automatically get put back into first gear. And that's a big disadvantage, because now you're in first gear, and you're still behind the curve, while everybody else who's not spinning out is going to pass you and is going to accelerate while you're still trying to accelerate from the first gear into the second and third. So you don't really want to spin out. You can go faster than is required in the curve, but don't go way too fast so that you don't spin out. Now, as you have just seen also, there are these stress cards. What do these stress cards mean? A stress card can end up in your hand. Well, actually I already had one at any time. And you can play a stress card anytime. If I end up, let's say we're back here, I'm in second gear. If I end up playing 2 cards now and one of them is a stress card, I can do that. And so when it's my turn as the first player, I turn them around. This one's easy. I just move 3. 1, 2, 3. This one is a risky card because you're stressed. You don't know how fast you should go. It's all a little stressy here. What you have to do with the plus sign is you have to pull cards from your draw pile until you've pulled somewhere a card between 1 and 4. I actually have already pulled a 4. In this case now, I'll move my card 4 more. Important to notice now that when we check, because you just passed the 7 here, when we check if you're within the speed, you'll actually take the sum of both those numbers to compare. This is 7, there's a 7, I'm actually good, it's fine. Had I pulled here a 0 instead of that 4 that I pulled, 0 can't use here, that goes straight on the trash pile, and you pull until you have 1 through 4. This is a 1 now. Okay, that would have been then 4. I was here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is lower than 7. I'm fine. So this is the basics. Now, as you see on the board, there are more things that actually happen during a turn. And I will actually explain it from the back. As you can see, all the black actions are the ones that every player has to do when it's their turn. The white things are all optional. And if we start from the back, so step 9, the last one in your turn, is you refill your hands to 7 cards. Step 8 actually is that you can decide before you pull new cards from your draw deck if you want to discard cards from your hand. And that's what this trash can that's marked out here is important. So you can't discard any heat, neither can you discard any stress card. Stress cards you can play when it's your turn, heat you can't even play. But the idea is with this step 8 in your options that if you know that your draw deck has very high cards, and I'm now here on this long straight stretch, I want to go really fast, then I'll probably get rid of all my 1s and 2s that I have my card in my hand and take from the draw pile, hoping that I get very high numbers so I can go very fast on this long stretch. Or the other way around, if I come to a curve and I only have high cards in my hand, I'll probably get rid of my high cards and I take small cards if they're in a draw pile. That's a little bit of luck. Step 7 we already looked at. That is when you get around a corner curve that you check the speed, and if you're higher than the speeds, then you take your heat. Step 6 is called slipstream. Slipstream is quite interesting because it gives you options to stay within the pack without actually playing very high cards. And what it means is that, and you see that actually nicely in the picture, that when blue now comes, and if blue ends up right behind me or right next to me, then they can decide, and it's optional, to do slipstream, which puts them 2 fields ahead. Or back here, slipstream 2 ahead. By the way, I don't think I've mentioned yet, but if 2 cars are next to each other, another car can still pass, but they cannot end up on the same field. If this card were to end up on this field, it will be placed 1 behind. Then, step 5, here you can cool down your engine if you're in gear 1 or 2, because you see here the cooldown signs. 1 cooldown for gear 2 and 3 cooldowns for gear 1. And what that means is, and you see that actually here on the heat card, you can take a heat card from your hand and place it back into the engine. And that's the only way how you can get heat cards out of your hand. If you don't have 3 heat cards or even 1 heat card in your hand, that step is useless to you. Second option is, and that's the plus and the heat here. If you want to, you see next to each gear, there's this plus symbol. You can always boost your turn. So instead of, or let's say I'm up there, my 2nd gear, and I played 2 cards, and I played them, it's 4, right? I move 4. And if I boost now, then it costs me a heat, because you see here it's plus heat. So the heat goes in here in my discard pile. And as for the stress card, I just get to pull cards from the draw pile until I have something between a 1 and a 4. So now these are actually good. Up. There's a 2. That would work. And then I can add 2 to my turn. Costs me heat, but it pushes me forward. You actually also see here in the gear action, you can also go ±2. So if you were in second gear and you want to go into fourth gear, you can do this at the beginning of a turn, but it also costs you heat. So if I go from second gear to fourth gear at the beginning of my turn, I put a heat here. And so the last action I haven't explained yet is action 4. But that action is only relevant for the player who's last in the turn. You see that here? Or in 5 or more player games, then also the second to last car. What happens to these cars is they can always go one step further. So once it's the red car's turn, they play their cards, and they can, if they want to, it's optional, they can go one more step. And also here, please note that this one more step, just like slipstream, will not count to the limit that you have when you go around the corner. It's always just the cards that are on the table that count. So you, as the last player or second to last in a 5+ game, you get to go 1+ if you wanna, and you can actually cool down your engine if you have another heat in your hand, which I currently don't. One last thing that doesn't happen too often but could happen to you. You might end up with a completely cluttered hand, meaning I have 4 heat and only 2 cards. I'm still in 4th gear, so in my next turn, the best thing I can do is I can go in 3rd gear, but I still don't have 3 cards to play. What I do then is I have to play the 2 cards that I could play. I can also play 1 card here that's heat. I put them all on the discard pile. I don't get to move. I have to skip this turn, but I can draw 3 more cards. I also get put into 1st gear. So next time I actually get to cool down a little bit, and I can get rid of these cards in my hand. But I've lost a turn. Not a situation you want to be in, but it doesn't happen too often. And here's the summary of the turn. You can follow all the steps on your player board. Step 1 and 2, everybody does at the same time. Step 1, you decide if you're going to change your gear. If you do plus or minus 1, it doesn't cost you anything. If you go plus minus 2, you actually get a heat that gets put in your trash pile. Step 2, every player puts 2 cards face down in front of them. Once everybody has done step 1 and 2, we move on with step 3, following the order of the cars. First is yellow. My turn. I flip my 2 cards, 4 and a 1, move my car, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step 4, if I were last or second to last, I could do 1 step further and a cooldown. I'm neither. Step 5, because I'm in second gear, I can do a cooldown if I had a heat in my hand. I don't. If I had a heat, I place it here. I can, if I want to, I can decide to boost. Because that's here, place it on boost, I get another heat. Boost means I'll flip around cards until I have a card between 1 and 4. I do. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, slipstream. Is there a car next to me or in front of me? No, there isn't, because on the first one, I pass out in that one. Otherwise, I would have moved 2 forward. 7, compare. If you have just passed the curve, compare the number up here to what you have here. I've got 9. This is a 7. I've got 2 too many compared to 7, so I have to move 2 heat onto the discard pile. And in that case, actually, I spin out. So in this case, I'll place my car in front of the curve again. Because I'm in second gear, I get a stress card that gets put on my discard pile, and I have to go back in first gear. Then, trash. Do I want to discard cards in my hand? I can only discard the ones in the 3. These I can't. I want to discard probably the 2 ones because I want to have high cards for the long stretch afterwards. These also go in the discard pile. And I fill up my hand to 7, which now I have only 4 available. I take this, shuffle it, put it over here, and I add 3 cards more from the draw pile into my hand. And that's my turn. And then blue does 3 through 9, then green, and then red. And that's what we do until the first car passes the finish line. Whoever passes first wins. And if 2 or more cars pass the finish line the same turn, then whoever is the furthest past the finish line actually wins. Please note that in this case, once you're past the finish line, you cannot do slipstreams anymore. But also, if you pass then a curve, that curve doesn't count anymore either. And here are a few hints for your first game. Make sure that you don't spin out. If you spin out, you're gonna lose touch to all the other players. If you don't spin out, it's very likely that the game is going to be very close until the end, no matter what you do. It's very close because slipstreaming always keeps you close together, and because of the extra rule that when you're last or second to last in a 5+ game, that you can actually move up a little bit and then you can boost a little bit and you can cool down, that the pack always stays together. And it's a very tight race until somebody really makes a mistake and either goes with a little less risk in a curve or with too much risk. If you spin out, it's a mistake. But what beginners usually do is that they don't dare really go over the speed limit in any of the curves. That's a mistake too. You need to sometimes take that risk because you still have enough options to cool down your engine and get rid of these heat cards that you have in your hand. But if you really go very slowly around the curves, you might lose sight of the pack and then you're all by yourself and you can't do the slipstreaming anymore. Should you be a little more advanced as a player, if you've played it a few times and you play with beginners, you might want to take out a couple heat cards from your own deck so that you don't have the opportunity to really speed up so much around the curves as the others do, and therefore everybody stays together a little more. And then if you get bored with the USA track and the regular game, of course, then you have the expansion. You can upgrade your car, you can do other races, you can do tournament style. You have all the options. It's a fun racing game, and I hope you enjoy playing it. And if you like the video as usual, please click on the subscribe button below. And I'm looking forward to seeing you back here on this channel.